We're on all business on the back. You'll be out here until 10 o'clock.
Your agenda.
It's not charged. You gotta charge
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. If you would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Dean Cruz. Here. Brian Cruz. Here. Kalinowski.
Here.
Steggy.
Here.
Ball. Walker.
Here.
Kukowski. Here.
Okay, under consideration of approval of the meeting agenda for tonight, we have a special presentation, first of all, by Rob Carson, Planning Director. He will be doing a presentation of the US 31 Corridor Plan. Under communications and announcements, we have A, Charter Communications letter about upcoming changes, B, AES email about expanded services, C is the MRA's 2017 fall and winter programs, and we have an addendum item to the new business. And oh, I'm not there yet, I'm sorry. But an addendum item to the communications and announcements. We have a brief three-page article in there about the recognition in the Traverse My North magazine of Magoon Creek Park, listed as one of the top 10 perfect picnic spots in Michigan. Under department and committee reports, A is the Water Department report, and Wade Troon's monthly report is included in your packet. B is the Fire Department report. C is the Zoning Administrator's report. E is the Planning Commission report with including item number 1, the July 18th regular meeting minutes. Item 2, the August 15th public hearing minutes for special use permit. And 3 is the August 15th regular meeting minutes. There was no, backing up, there was no Zoning Board of Appeals meeting this past month, nor Board of Review. That takes us to G, the Building and Grounds Committee. You have their minutes in your packet. H is the PEG report. I is the Downtown Development Authority. 2 enclosures there. Item 1 is the July 6th regular meeting minutes, proposed minutes. And item 2 is the August 1st regular meeting proposed minutes. J, the Personnel Committee has not met. I anticipate probably meeting in October. Item K is the Regional Resource Recovery, and closed in your packet is the June 29th regular meeting minutes and also the July 27th regular meeting minutes. And K is the sewer project. Under old business, we have item A, approval of the license agreement between the Charter Township of Filer and the Lakeland Association Recreation Incorporated to construct a fire break. Item B is approval to dissolve the agreement with Stronach Township regarding the Stronach boat launch and withdraw monies and close the bank account attached to this account at Filer Credit Union. Under new business, we have item A, approval of the bid from Swiderski Brothers Excavating for $11,230 for work at the Township Hall washout area. Item B is approval of the bid from True Shine Cleaning and Preservation LLC for $660 to strip and refinish the rec hall floors and for deep cleaning the kitchen area. Item C is approval of a bid from Manistee Vinyl for $3,150 for the replacement of 4 windows at the Township Fire Station. And then we have under new business addendum item number D, which is approval of bids for a new furnace and air conditioning unit at the Township office here at 2505 Filer City Road. Any other revisions to the meeting agenda for tonight? Or did I get all of them? If no further revisions, then I would entertain a motion for approval of the meeting agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Brian Cruz, support by Colin Husky to approve the meeting agenda for tonight. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Under the consent agenda for tonight, we have item A, minutes of the regular board meeting held August 1st, 2017. B is the financial report. C, approval of the township general fund expenditures, including the fire department. And those checks are numbered 34865 through 34945. Accounts payable total $37,104.82. Payroll totals $11,077.95 for a grand total of $48,182.77. Item D is approval of water department expenditure checks numbered 2400 through 2408, totaling $35,413.43. E is approval for board members to attend the MTA on the Road regional meeting to be held on October 11th in Ludington, Michigan at a cost of $111 per person. Item F is approval for board members to attend the 14th Regional Summit to be held September 21st at Stronach Township Hall at a cost of $15 per person. And then we have addendum item G, which is consideration of approval for the supervisor to file a local revenue sharing board grant application for a security system at 2111 Nelson Street office and at the township offices. Anything else for the consent agenda? If not, I will entertain a motion for approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Dean Cruz, support by Stady to approve the consent agenda for tonight. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And And that takes us to our special presentation for tonight. I'd like to introduce Mr. Rob Carson, Manistee County Planning Director. And he has Tamara with him who's going to assist with this presentation. I wasn't sure if you're here to talk about that or something else, Tamara. My apologies. So, Rob Carson and Tamara Buswinka.
Thank you. My name is Rob Carson. I don't know if everybody's here because of the US 31 corridor plan we're going to present. If you're not, lucky you get to hear the presentation. My name is Rob Carson. I'm the County Planning Director here in Manistee County.
And I'm Tamara Buswinka, and I'm a consultant for the Alliance for Economic Success. And just a real quick, Rob, I'm going to put in context this project because Filer Township really led this charge. I don't know if many of you were a part of an effort about 2 years ago when Filer Township, DDA, and the Planning Commission, and then the Township Board recognized that they wanted to spend some attention on the US 31 corridor within Filer Township. And so underwent a very large public input process to understand the vision for the corridor. And that resulted in that plan behind the Township Board members there of the US 31 opportunities, and it's like an economic development plan for the Filer DDA along the corridor. And so what we did at AES is under Rob's direction and with my assistance, got a grant, about $55,000 grant. The Filer Township Board paid about $3,000 to do that work, but the entire project to do the entire US 31 corridor cost about somewhere around $60,000. And here we are today with the entire corridor taken care of. So I'll let Rob continue on, but I just wanted to let you know that Filer Township should be very proud because they led the charge in this effort.
What portion of 31?
Red Apple. Well, so the whole project is county line to county line, but in Filer, that plan looks at Red Apple to 12th Street. Okay?
Before I start, I have 2 copies of the plan printed. I'm just going to leave these here. And then I also have a CD with a digital copy. And then I have just some information here for your public input, and then cost of community services information, which we'll get to later on in the presentation. Important to know. You are. So we actually have more copies if the audience wants some. Feel free to pass them around. There's 2 different documents. It's probably not enough for everybody though. So as Tamara was saying, we put together a US 31 corridor plan that encompasses all the communities within Manistee County. So here's the 31 corridor. The outline for our presentation and the plan itself, we're going to cover the planning process. We're going to look at the demographics for just the communities along the 31 corridor. We'll discuss existing conditions and trends and the analysis of those, as well as public input received through several sessions. We ultimately arrive at best practices of corridor design, which are categorized under access, activity, and aesthetics. That develops a preferred vision for our corridor, ultimately rounding out character zones, and then a route planner, which is our implementation process for the plan itself. So our planning process, as we start any planning process, we bring together a leadership team. Our leadership team is comprised of stakeholders and members of individual village councils and township boards, as well as representation from the county and Little River Band of Ottawa Indians. We then collected data, analyzed that data, we then wrote the plan, and now we're through the process of constructive review and then ultimately adoption by the local units of government. So our demographics, as to no one's surprise, our resident population overall in Manistee County is decreasing. Filer Township actually displayed a 3.6% growth according to 2015 American Fact Finder census data. The city of Manistee decreased at 3.5%. The age of our residents, our age cohorts of 34 and younger are decreasing. Our age cohorts of 50 and over are increasing. So basically, Retirees moving to the community, as well as existing residents, are now getting older and then moving into those older age cohorts, and we're not replacing it with youth. So we're losing our younger residents. Seasonal population is present year-round. This is obvious to anybody who's here permanently, but it ultimately, it's a 37% increase in July and August in Manistee County as a whole. So we're looking at 13,000, 14,000 people in excess beyond our permanent population, which is around 25,000. In terms of high school diplomas or greater, all of our communities are greater than the state average, but we do lag behind the state average in terms of bachelor degree. We hope to see this trend change with the Launch Manistee program, seeking to have all of our students apply to trade schools and to 2-year, 4-year colleges. We also need them to come back here and live in the community in order to actually change our demographics. So we have people in the community working on that. In terms of median income, all communities are greater than the county average, except for the city of Manistee. And all but Filer Township are less than the state average. So Filer Township actually has a higher median income than the state of Michigan. In terms of poverty status, the graph on the top displays each of the communities and child care. I don't have a laser pointer with me, I apologize. But this is no child, 1 to 2 children, 3 to 4, 5 or more. As you go across the graph, it's a greater percentage of poverty. So larger families are obviously more prone to poverty. Also, when we look at owner versus renter occupied structures, those that are in poverty are renting. It is clear. And those that are typically not in poverty own a home or a condo of some sort. The city has the highest percentage of poverty within the county. In terms of employment, all the employment groups along the entire corridor fall into 20 different sectors outlined by NACE codes. But 70% of those fall into 7 sectors: healthcare, manufacturing, retail trade, accommodations and food services, public administration, education services, and construction. Recently, the Alliance for Economic Success, in conjunction with Purdue University and USDA Rural Development, put together a Stronger Economies Together plan, and that looks at outlining certain sectors for job growth within our region. And so we're looking particularly at energy, both renewable and fossil, advanced materials, agribusiness, food processing, and technology jobs. In terms of our existing conditions inventory, we inventoried every single parcel on the entire length of the corridor within, or if it had access to the corridor. We also inventoried every structure located on those parcels or any structure within 300 feet of the corridor. So we obviously have lost significant wetlands throughout the state of Michigan. In excess of 78–80% of our wetlands since pre-development are now gone. So we are pushing for preservation of our remaining wetlands. Watershed planning should be supported, and we should support watershed water quality provisions. Steep slopes, we were able to, through the state of Michigan, and FEMA receive what's called LIDAR data. It's a laser infrared or laser digital data of elevation models. We run that through an analysis in our computer systems, and we can develop topography like the map displayed on the screen here. The maps are rather small in scale, but it's very important to realize that we can utilize this data on an individual parcel level when we're working with the development community.
Does that include beach club?
Yes, yep, includes everything. In terms of land use, our higher density residential and commercial are confined to certain portions of the corridor, primarily northern Filer Township, the city of Manistee, southern Manistee Township, and then adjacent to the village of Bear Lake. Agriculture, open space, and large lot residential lend to our rural and scenic character, which can be seen in southern Filer Township, and then quite a bit in Brown Township and Bear Lake Township, and then Pleasanton Township on the north side of the county. Commercial uses outside or denser developed areas are often related to farm or rural retail. So farm implement sales, machinery sales, those type of businesses, outdoor stores, that type of thing. The city of Manistee is the core commercial hub with additional activity immediately adjacent in Filer Township and southern Manistee Township. In terms of zoning, we have 6 separate communities that maintain zoning along the corridor. Bear Lake Village is the only community that does not have zoning right now. Little River Band of Ottawa Indians regulate their own tribal trust lands and trust with the federal government. When we looked at zoning standards, setbacks, height, and most bulk requirements for lot provisions amongst all the communities are very similar. There isn't a whole lot of difference. We run into quite a bit of differences when we're looking at the rural agriculture and rural residential districts. When you move from one township to another, some townships will have agricultural areas that are zoned at one house per 2 acres, where in areas of Brown Township, you're dealing with 1 house per 20 acres, 1 house per 4 acres, which is actually true agricultural preservation. The more urbanized and suburbanized communities place greater zoning requirements for landscaping, signage, and site design. Filer Township is one of those. That is obviously comes about because probably when development occurred previously and there were residents that were unhappy with it, you have amendments to your zoning ordinance, making your regulations more stringent. That's periodically been occurring in our more urbanized counties, or townships, excuse me. Local units overall lack access and connectivity standards to US 31, which are being supported and emphasized by the Michigan Department of Transportation. So in 2003, MDOT put together a corridor management plan, and they outlined access and connectivity standards in that. They did that for Filer Township, the city of Manistee, and the southern portion of Manistee Township. We inventoried all driveway accesses to 31s, all parcels that share access amongst each other, and businesses that share driveways. So we have that data now for the remainder of the corridor for those communities that were never completed in 2003. We're obviously supporting what MDOT has put together in terms of access and connectivity standards, and we'd like to see those hopefully adopted in all communities along the corridor. In terms of our parking lot location for our businesses, 30% of our parking lots are the desired side and rear of buildings. The reason we say desired rear and side, Tamara will get into the public input and she'll display what the public basically trended at our public input sessions. The local ridership of public transit is very limited because we do not have a fixed route. That there is a survey that is going to be taken by Manistee Transportation Incorporated. So we're hoping that through that survey we can follow some of that data and try to increase ridership and hopefully create some fixed routes at more popular locations throughout the county. So our corridor as a whole is not pedestrian friendly. The City of Manistee and the Village of Pear Lake offer our greatest pedestrian connections via sidewalks that connect to some interior trails. Our existing regional trails don't connect to any of the population centers along the corridor. We have regional snowmobile trails on the north side of the county. One is at 13 Mile Road right here. The other one is on Lumley Road at Pleasant Township Hall. Those are our closest access to our snowmobile trails, and neither of them hit very dense populated areas, unless you want to consider maybe the north side of Bear Lake Village dense, but typically it's not like Filer Township's dense. So right now we're working on implementing the regional trail plan that was developed through the 2016 countywide park and recreation plan. So hopefully we can have these regional trails developed here in the next 5, 10, 15 years. In terms of commuter data, the top graph, the brown line displays the percentage of commuters that are staying within Manistee County for each of the local units of government for work. So you can see that a large proportion of the residents from each of the townships each of the townships along the corridor are remaining in the county for work. When you move to the second graph at the bottom, that is displays whether or not those residents are actually working in their township of residence for work. So you can see that a lot of residents are moving outside the town or traveling outside of the township to work. But then what we did is we delved into the actual commuter times. And when you look at Filer Township, for example, you see a commuter time of 12 minutes. So a lot of your residents are traveling outside the township to work, but they're staying immediately around the Manistee Lake area. So they're either working at one of the industries on the lake here, the prison, the casino, or some of our smaller businesses. In In terms of structure condition, all of the structures, both residential and commercial, are rated as very good at 80%. When we did this inventory into structure conditions, we did it from the right-of-way, so we can't technically tell structurally if they are sound, but we looked more at broken windows, missing roofs, shingles, stuff like that, peeling paint, siding that was missing. But everything rated out very good at 80%. Bear Lake Village had the largest proportion of poor and fair rated structures, although they have that structure leveling fire, which brought down 2 of them, and then the county is looking at removing the old store on the corner, the variety store on the corner of Bear Lake Village. So that will increase their structures to good. Our facade makeup for commercial structures is primarily brick and block, and to a lesser degree glass and stucco. Our newer commercial developments utilize monument, wall, and window signs at almost 50%. The older commercial sites utilize the pole signs and the temporary signs with the flashing arrows on them, those type of signs. Landscaping is found at about 75% of all structures along the corridor, and 50% of commercial structures have landscaping. When you look at anything that was basically built 2000 on, there's landscaping at the site. When we turn back and we look at structures that were built pre-1990, a lot of them do not have landscaping. And many of our communities didn't have landscaping requirements in place for those structures that have been built since 2000, but a lot of those commercial builders are putting landscaping on site because they know it's aesthetically pleasing and it makes the structure stand out, makes people want to go there and shop. So water, in terms of infrastructure, we have water, sewer, and drainage districts currently located in our areas of denser development. Expansion of the sewer district infrastructure is being studied right now and proposed for Bear Lake Village and potentially Onekama around Portage Lake. And then obviously Filer Township is connecting to the city of Manistee. We did kernel density mapping, and what that is basically we took every single structure point. We ran both a residential and a commercial density analysis. It takes those points and it weighs them against neighboring points and how far they are from each other. So what you're looking at on the map here is a residential kernel density map, and it goes from dark green through lighter greens to yellow to an orange to a red. The red are obviously the more dense areas. So what this does, it shows us our pockets or character of where our residential structures are densely located along the corridor. And then it displays the areas that are more rural in nature. Any of us that travel the corridor, we know where these are, but we can actually put this down on paper, on a map, and show data-wise that we have character along the corridor. It's not just visually observed. We did the same thing with the commercial structures, and you can see that the density around the village of Bear Lake, northern Bear Lake Township, the little pocket between 8 and 9 mile roads, and then obviously northern Filer Township, the city of Manistee, and southern Manistee Township. So ultimately we take all of our data and we put it together on what we call compiled data overlay. The compiled data overlay has both the commercial density analysis, which is in the purple and blues, has the residential, which is the orangest brown. We also have the large lot residential, agricultural properties, and open space. And the large lot residential is any residential property that is 19 acres or greater. And so you can see in the areas where we have least density, we have large green parcels, which denote agriculture or large lot residential, lends to our scenic views. Our dense areas are located in our areas of infrastructure. So we should emphasize continuing dense development where the infrastructure is available rather than sprawling along the corridor, impacting our rural and scenic views that a lot of people are coming here to enjoy. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tamara to cover public input.
So again, we're going county line to county line, and all of that data collection and analysis is so that we can understand what we kind of intuitively already know here, but we did an analysis and we can really see how things change as you go up and down the corridor. And then you can make some decisions from it. But the data is one thing, but we needed to find out what folks who lived in Manistee County thought about the US 31 corridor. It is kind of like our main street of the entire county, people are either traveling through Manistee or we're traveling within, and it's our home. So what do we like about it? What don't we like about it? What would make it more attractive for people to stay here, move here, invest here? Or what would make it great for people who already live here like us so that it's a nicer place to be? So we did that. We had a lot of vision sessions through all the communities along the corridor. Again, Filer had a couple of them when we developed that corridor plan. But they were, we also ran in Manistee Township and the Bear Lakes. And so what we asked them is, well, what don't you like and what do you like? And what they don't like is a lot of parking. They don't like parking without the landscaping and a lot of asphalt. They don't like the temporary pole and very tall signs. They don't like a lack of landscaping in between the sidewalk and the road. They don't like the rural views impacted by development that doesn't fit a rural character. They don't like the dirt paths. They want a safe place to walk. They don't want to walk on dirt. They don't like the 2 lanes with a center turn lane, and they don't like all those curb cuts. And so that kind of leads you to what do they like? Well, in rural areas, they like it scenic. They like the agricultural look and feel, and they want ag to be successful. They like the natural vegetation versus the more professional landscape yard. They like the views of the lakes and the orchards and the open space. They like the buildings set back further from the road. They want the overhead utility lines buried, and they still want two travel lanes, but deceleration lanes to make it easier to travel up and down the corridor. And in the suburban areas, which Filer is considered a suburban area, they want landscaping along the road, and they want the landscaping in between US 31 and a pathway or a sidewalk. They want the signage to be a monument or on the wall of the building, not the pole. They want a single row of parking in the front, but then the rest of the parking on the side or in the rear. And they want the building to be brought closer to the road so you can start kind of creating more of a village or a downtown kind of atmosphere. Still want the 2 travel lanes, but maybe a boulevard to help with controlled turns and to allow the traffic to move up and down the corridor in a much nicer and smoother manner. And then, of course, all the utility lines buried. So in urban areas, many of the same kind of attributes. Landscaping, the sidewalks, parking, although in the rear, no parking in the front. The buildings brought to the front and 0 lot lines, so really no setback in the front. Again, 2 travel lanes and all the utilities buried. So we had a couple areas in the county that needed some focused attention, and I told you Filer led the way. So this is actually Filer Township, and I don't know, maybe some of you are in the picture. Spent a number of nights working on developing a vision for the corridor. Also worked in the village of Bear Lake doing something similar. They were looking at just the area right down by Hopkins Park. And those resulted in that plan behind there, and then the village of Bear Lake has something very similar. So some of the top things that came out of that public input is, again, we need landscaping both on the public and the private parts of property. Signage, lighting, we need pedestrian movement, and then focus on how the site, how the properties are designed, the placement of the buildings, the installation of a sidewalk, where the signage go, where the parking goes, and then obviously just making sure that development is focused and clustered in areas that make sense, where there's already higher density, commercial, or where residential areas already, and where there's infrastructure. So really to look at the entire corridor as a whole and logically place development where it makes sense and in a manner that fits in the character that we saw as we analyzed and that we know intuitively because we live here. So here is Filer's plan. It's behind the board members here, but I'll just spend a few minutes because, you know, we're here in Filer. This really talked about connecting neighborhoods to the 31 corridor so that there's a lot of walking. People want to walk 31 and they want to walk from where they live to go downtown to shop and eat and do whatever they want to do. There was a call for gateway signage to say, hey, welcome to Filer Township. Banners along the road, a sidewalk along the road, and to ensure that as you cross the corridor, you're safe. So they want some good connections. We need to close some driveways so that we don't have as many curb cuts, so that traffic still flows really nicely, but it's done in a controlled, maybe even a little bit slower manner than what's going on right now, which is called traffic calming. Change the zoning, because right now you're not allowed mixed uses, not allowed residential, but there's certainly potential for residential development along 31. So to do a project that improves and updates zoning, which the Planning Commission is already engaged in doing right now. Actually, a lot of these elements, the DDA and the Planning Commission are already starting to implement and take steps to address. The Village of Bear Lake did a lot of really wonderful things, but the most important thing is that they're trying to connect the lake, which is their really important asset, to their commercial district, because they know that those two things are really linked. And then in the process, improving Hopkins Park. So, we did spend a lot of time talking about and researching what are the best practices for corridor development. And we focused on 3 categories: access, activity, and aesthetics, and really understanding what other corridors out there in Michigan and throughout the nation are very, very successful and are great places to live. And so real quick, there are some things that we have already talked about that make for great corridors. For access, we're, walkability, curb cuts, making sure it's safe for pedestrians, and that the autos can move safely. Activity, we're talking about mixed use, nodal development, placing development where it really belongs in its infrastructure. And then aesthetics, we're talking about how you design a site, the setbacks, the parking, the landscaping. But basically, this entire plan is pointing towards something that is called a form-based code. And we're not going to really ever do a code, but we're leaning towards this idea that as you develop in a character zone along the corridor, what happens inside the building is really not as important as what the building looks like and how the building how the setting of the building along the corridor. So if you wanted to develop something like a tool and die shop in an area along the corridor, that would be fine, just as long as you're in a building and the building is built in such a way that it doesn't look really industrial. So that's kind of what form is. It's really not about the use, it's about what the building looks like and how you as a person who's walking along the corridor feels about it and interacts with it. So, Rob?
So ultimately what was developed from this to try to implement that form along the entirety of the corridor is what we're calling character zones. You may have seen these before, called transects. We don't really feel that transect describes what we're looking for along the 31 corridor. So as you move from right to left, you have C5 urban to C4 suburban, C3 transitional, which transitions to rural agriculture, and then obviously an environmental preservation area, which would be for specifically for wetlands or steep slopes. So when we take that and we overlay the data and we take the public input together, we ultimately arrive at what we're calling a preferred corridor. And I wish I had my laser pointer, but what we do is we have along these maps, and they're in the plan as well, but they're broken up. You can see these lines. So in Pleasanton Township up here, C2 rural and agriculture transitions to a C1. This is the headwaters of Little Bear Creek where it comes out of Bear Lake. It's a big swamp if you've ever gone just north of 13 Mile Road, and there's no development taking place there right now. To a transitional area right at 13 Mile Road where there is a little bit of business taking place, moves into suburban area, Bear Lake Village, then downtown, then suburban again, transitions back out, goes rural, and it runs rural all the way to Coates Highway in Brown Township. We have a little nodal area of 8 and 9 Mile, and then it transitions back into a suburban, or transitional into a suburban, and the suburban is right here at the tribal intersection of M22 and US 31, where you have the residential properties just north of the M22 intersection. We then have the very steep slopes just north of the airport, environmental preservation area. We shouldn't be developing on those slopes. It then transitions back into a suburban, Manistee Township. Monroe Street turns back into urban, and then suburban, northern part of Filer Township, transitional, and then you have a little bit of rural on the southern end where you have a lot of wetlands and the golf course and so forth. So ultimately, what we're looking at is rather than individual physical municipality boundaries being division lines, we're looking at the natural features of the corridor and what the corridor looks like now and what the public perceives and what they want it to look like in the future. In order to do that, we need to start categorizing by what is taking place on the corridor and creating those division lines where it makes sense already, because we have certain development in place, certain infrastructure in place. I'm going to take the time now to mention the cost of community services study. That is one of the single most important pieces of data that pushes against residential sprawl. It costs the taxpayer more to support residential sprawl in forms of taxes than it does to do dense development, put residential and cluster and locate it. And it's costing on emergency services to patrol these rural areas where you have a lot of spread out houses. It's costly to run infrastructure, and that cost gets passed on to all the taxpayers. So it's we have direct data for counties and townships in the state of Michigan that actually outlines that for every tax dollar received, you're going to spend $1.80 taking care of services if you allow sprawl development. So ultimately, we can't afford it. We will bankrupt. Everybody will go bankrupt. So we really need to spread that information about cost of community services. Now, obviously, there are certain aspects of the corridor in the rural areas where people want large lot residential areas. That is obviously allowed. And what we can do is we can use things like cluster development. I don't know if everybody's familiar with cluster development, but you can, rather than looking at a minimum lot size of one house per 10 acres, or a minimum lot size of 10 acres for a house, you look at density. So you would say 1 unit per 40 acres. So it doesn't matter if you bring together 80 acres, if you bring together 160, if you bring 160 together, you could have 4 houses on that, but what you can do is you offer what's called a density bonus. If they place, you give them 3 extra units per 40 acres, and if they place all of those on a 10-acre section, you can take that remaining 30 acres, put in a conservation easement, and continue to farm.
To this. So it's really important to note that we are not talking about making any of this non-conforming, but as development occurs over time and as people need to do stuff to their property, we can ask them to do these kind of improvements. So here's another area that you recognize. So this is what it looks like right now, but this is what it could look like. Here we have a new development with no parking in the front. Even seating in the front. You still have the views of Manistee Lake, and you've got a wonderful sidewalk to walk on. Great buffer between you walking on the sidewalk and the street with a row of trees and nice landscaping. We even have a bike path on 31. And monument signs all up and down so that the entire view isn't cluttered with a bunch of signs. Here is the transitional area, the C3 area. This is the area that's not quite suburban and not quite rural, and this is actually over by the Bear Lake Township. This is what it could look like. One side is a golf course. It's very rural looking. The other side already has existing development, so you put a sidewalk on that side, let people walk from the village up into that area, but on the side that's more open, no sidewalks, still rows of trees to protect and buffer pedestrians. We've got on-road biking. So that's, here you have development, but it's just being done in a way that's very pleasing. And of course, in our rural areas, there's going to be development. So what does that look like? And this really is important when we were talking about form. Doesn't really matter what happens inside the building, but what does the building look like? So here is development in a rural area. Here we have more ag going on, and even the development of a barn. We don't care what's going on in that barn. Like I said, it could be a tool and die shop, but it looks rural. And in fact, oh Rob, I wish we put that did you have that picture? Ah, bummer. We've got a great picture of an area down in Holland that Rob took of a gas station that is a barn. And it looks perfectly rural and ag, but it is a gas station. So that's what we mean by form. And of course, these environmental preservation areas, those will never change, except cleaning up the invasive species. So what do we need to do? We need to create these character zones, and we need to start getting the discussions with the individual communities to talk about updating their zoning ordinances. And we need to develop measures so that we can figure out over time if this manner of creating character in the corridor and developing the corridor, how we're doing, if we're achieving the goals that the communities have set for it. We do offer a matrix of some suggested zoning ordinance, some regulations for communities to consider. But like I said, here in Filer Township, the Planning Commission is actually already working on the zoning ordinance for the corridor right here in our, the commercial area of the township. So tonight we're actually asking the township board if they will adopt the principles of this plan. And then we need to start collaborating with all the other communities so we can get unified in thought and direction, and then continue to work with Rob at the county planning or consultants to kind of do all the regulatory mechanisms that we need to implement this. So thank you, and I guess if there's any questions, Rob and I'd be happy to talk to you about them.
Any questions from the board? Tamara or Rob? Want to take a couple minutes and do any questions from the audience?
Oh, of course. The audience has any questions?
Well, the only question I really have on that is Filer Township thinking of what they're planning on doing for the corridor. I mean, you mentioned from Red Apple to 12th Street, and I know that that's the main one for our area, and you're talking to C4. I know the cost that would be involved in doing something like that and so forth, and yeah, you want to generate as much commercial and so forth as you can in any community anymore, but you're talking a large area and so forth, and the cost, to be honest, would be astronomical and so forth and that. Is there any plans and everything else of where your next step is to?
Let me say one thing. The plan is not retroactive.
Right.
So we're not going, it does not say to anybody that you need to tear out your parking lots and plant trees. It's going to be proactive going forward. So we're looking at amendments to zoning ordinances basically. Now there is, I don't know if the township board has considered doing any type of improvements in terms of street trees and stuff like that, but there's grants we can go after as well to help to move some of this along quicker.
Yeah. And in fact, the DDA just this last Tuesday, had the USDA Rural Development to come and speak to them about funding mechanisms and to help kind of figure out, well, what projects on that plan do you want to start with first? What do you want to tackle? What makes sense? What can we do for free, and what are we going to need money for? Because you're right, it's going to be expensive, and it's going to take time, but we need to be persistent.
I know I worked in a community in Illinois one time, and basically they had some property that was given to them by the state, well, by the county and so forth on back taxes right along the corridor. And they took some of that and they said, you want to get it back in the tax roll. Does Filer have anything like that along the corridor that has?
We have recently, just in the past year, purchased 4 parcels
Okay.
along the corridor, just off the corridor, basically. But yeah, and also to tag on to what Rob and Tamara were saying, we also had some discussion on Tuesday regarding things that the township is going to have to do to make ourselves eligible to pursue some of those grants.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's all right now in the planning stages. But those are all things that we're definitely discussing and looking at, studying.
Love some volunteers for some of these committees. If you're interested, let Terry know.
Yeah, well, I know back in Illinois, a large parcel of land, they figured it would be a good, what they call a light industrial park. And the money that the village eventually paid to put in the sewers and the water and everything, and the retention ponds, the money they put in, this is 10 years later, and they still have not gotten back. And, you know, it's a fear for the people in town because it's putting the pressure on them, so, yeah.
Sir, did you have a question?
I heard when you were going through what the people wanted, they mentioned 4 lanes, and yet when you came to your recommendations, I didn't see 4 lanes in there at all.
So, I don't
No,
believe
that
anybody
was on the
said.
not desired slide, was the
Yeah.
4 lanes with the center turn lane.
You said that there were 4 lanes desired in both urban and rural.
No. No, if you'd like to go back, we can show you. No, nobody said they wanted 4 lanes. If anything, people talked about traffic calming and getting rid of some of the lanes to try to slow traffic down. And really the focus was on making it safer to turn and slow down so you can get into the properties to shop. But nobody wanted additional lanes. And to be honest, this corridor plan really isn't about the road. That's MDOT's domain, and we have very little that we can do to affect change. This was more about what is happening on the properties adjacent to
But
the
you
road.
could make recommendations and bring pressure to bear.
We could, but it was never for 4 lanes. Anything else? Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No.
I have one comment. I'm on the board of the garden club. And up until last year, we did the petunias and things like that. And then literally, there was no longer any interest. I mean, if you're going to be actively pursuing this as far as landscaping and things like that, I mean, if you need, help from the garden club, we've got volunteers. There's a lot of things that we would look forward to helping with or doing in that type of progress.
Thank you. That is fantastic. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Looks good. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Tamara and Rob, for your time. Appreciate that very much.
We're going to just tear down while you...
Sure, that's fine. Okay, moving into communications and announcements, you have in your packet a letter from Charter Communications about some upcoming changes, a couple of areas of slight cost increases. And item B, you have communication from AES. Expanded services. And I suppose we have Tamara here. If you have any questions, I might get on Tamara just
Of course.
to answer any questions you might have. I forget what date this was in the paper, but and there's, I guess, been following along, there's cities meeting in their minutes and that. There's AES is in a little bit of a state of flux right now, I guess I would say, for lack of a better term, but they've certainly, when you look at historically what's happened over the last number of years in the Manistee area, Fowler Township, Manistee Township, there's just been a tremendous amount of work of positive nature that's come out of AES. So I don't know, Tamara, if you want to add anything to that, or if you have any questions.
No, if you have any questions, for sure. AES is kind of in a transition. They're going to to be looking for an executive director because I really feel that they would like a face for the organization. Right now, we've just been operating with 3 consultants who have been doing the work, but maybe we didn't pay attention to some of the public relation aspect to the organization. So they're really looking forward to having somebody on board that has that skill set to be the face and the first point of contact with people. Yeah, we just hope to continue to be able to do the work that we've been doing. With our bodies.
And we hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item C on the communications announcements, you've got a copy of the programs being offered this fall and winter by the MRA. And item D, a copy of what was in the My North magazine, highlighting 10 perfect picnic spots in northern Michigan. And kind of nice, Lagoon Creek was recognized there as well as Sunland Park. Along that line, we had some discussion Tuesday at the DDA board meeting about signage. I know, as far as I know right now, we've just got the one sign just south, I believe it's just south of Murky Road, not Murky, I'm sorry, Potts Farm Road, that mentions Lagoon Creek Natural Area, and it was suggested by the DDA that maybe we look at some more signage, some additional signage. That'd be a good idea to pursue that. I know, just speaking with people that come into the community from outside that aren't aware of it, and I mentioned Lagoon Creek Park to them, and they, well, what kind of park is it, where is it, and that sort of thing. So maybe we can enhance that a little bit with a little more signage. Okay, that takes us to public comment. Public comment. Yes, sir.
I have a comment about Lagoon Creek.
Would you please just state your name?
Kurt Falkenhagen.
Podium, please.
I'm sorry.
Kurt Falkenhagen.
Okay.
Can you go to the podium, please, so I can get you on camera?
Yeah, if you go to the podium, then Keith can get you a little bit better on camera.
I'm happy here.
You're happy there?
And it's
We'll
a
get
short
the back of your
comment,
head.
so I can't even walk with it fast.
Okay.
We just attacked the invasive species of Japanese barberry in the Lakeland area. You have a ton of it starting in Lagoon Creek. You're going to have the Japanese barberry attracts small rodents and attracts ticks. So if that's not addressed in Lagoon Creek, you're going to have a tick haven out there. Better to get it now before it spreads too much. It's a whole lot cheaper now than later.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment? Someone in the back? Yes.
Pam Bowers. I just wanted to thank the board for listening to us when we looked at putting in handicapped areas and stuff, that you stayed with the concept that it was a natural area. And I think that proves itself with the number of people who go out there and our status around Grand Traverse. If we can be in the 10 best areas for picnic right now without any changes, it says a lot for you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone?
I guess I'll just kind of speak up a little bit. I'm just kind of reading through the report tonight from the Filer Township Fire Department, referencing still working on the agreement for this fire break at this point. I'm kind of stumped by that. I'm assuming it's ready to go for you guys.
It's on the agenda, yeah. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So that was all I wanted to go.
Anyone else? Okay, then moving into reports, you've got in your packet the monthly water report from Wade Trim, and I'd just like to mention I am going to be meeting tomorrow morning with Pat Gallagher at 9 o'clock. Just to review any concerns that we may have. I want to also mention that our contract for water infrastructure with Wade Trim renews automatically, and I forget the exact date, but again, with no cost increase in that contract for the upcoming year. So just wanted to mention that. And if you do have any concerns that you'd like me to take tomorrow morning when I meet with Pat, I'd be happy to. Item B, the fire department report. Jim?
Yeah, before we do your report, about the activity last month, and yes, there is the agreement with the Lakeland Association, and we can discuss that when you get into new business, but unless there's any questions for me, that's pretty much it. We're still working. We had all of our ladders tested, and they've all passed, and we're doing our annual inspections and that type of thing, so we're still kind of busy right now with doing all of our annual stuff, so before the snow flies. But we are planning another a Halloween parade again this year on Halloween, so put that on your calendar for the 31st of October. So, unless somebody's got some questions for me.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And just also wanted to remind you that we have the fire department, the appreciation dinner coming up October 15th. Yeah, thank you. October 15th for the appreciation dinner. So make sure you get that on your calendars. Item C is Larry's report, zoning administrator. And I guess a little bit of activity this past month. I didn't even know, wasn't even aware that you were doing some building. Yeah. Something you have. Item E, you have the Planning Commission's minutes in your packet from July 18th and then 15th, the public hearing and the regular meeting minutes. And Board of Review, again, did not meet. Building and Grounds minutes are in your packet. I don't think there was anything else from that agenda that I wanted to mention, other than maybe the fact that we are looking at probably making a recommendation down the road for some additional tables at the rec center. And then, of course, we're going to have to look at purchase of some tables for the meeting room at 2111 Nelson Street. And we're going to take a look at a couple different options there for tables. So feel free to give me any input to take to the building and grounds committee. Item H is the PEG Commission. Keith, is there anything you wanted to add to your report?
Nothing to add exactly, but Brian, school just started yesterday, and the kids are all excited. There's going to be a big class for the video production, and they're going to be setting up a sound stage and an audio voiceover booth. They got some funding from the school. Amen. And we're going to be also sharing some of our equipment. They're going to be doing some advertising for some of the local businesses, which they can charge money for and help out with their budget. So it's going good. All the equipment's still working. Some of it's getting old, but we'll replace it as we can. And that's about it. That's just some questions.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Brian's got, with his video productions class, he's got a lot of returning students this year
Yes,
from last year, so they should.
Yeah, that's great because they have experience.
Yeah, they should be able to do a lot of good things this year.
But I think it's the first time that that's happened lately. Good.
Okay, item I, you have the DDA minutes in your packet from both the July 6th and August 1st meetings. J, Personnel Committee has not met, but we do have a review to do, I believe, in October, so we'll be calling a meeting for that committee. K, the Regional Resource Recovery, you have the minutes in your packet from the June 29th regular meeting, as well as the July 27th regular meeting, and our Shirley being our representative on that, of course, is not here tonight. She's obviously with Jack. So, we'll keep her in our thoughts and prayers. Under the sewer project, I spoke with Brian Sousa just today to find out where we're at on that 41 permit, and I was interested to see if he heard anything from DEQ yet. And he did get a call from DEQ yesterday, and they anticipate getting Filer's 41 permit issued, he said, either by the end of this week or early next week. So once that comes through, then the next question was, and there's going to be some conditions attached to it, one of course, which is the city getting their work done downstream from the connection point. And they already had plans to do that anyway, but my concern with Brian was, can we then start at the south end on our project? As soon as we get the permit, get started right away. That'll give the city time to get their work done, 12th Street downstream, and then so they'll be ready when we're ready to attach to it. And he said that that's exactly what he was anticipating doing. So once that permit comes through, he'll communicate with me, and then we'll go to the next step. And starting at this late, we won't be doing laterals this year anyway. It'll just be the construction of the main. So by starting at the south end and going north, getting ready to connect when the city's done, I guess my thought is it's not going to matter whether we get connected this fall or we have to wait until spring to connect, because the condition from DEQ is that we don't connect until they're done anyway. Well, we're not going to connect until we have our laterals in. Well, we could connect before we have our laterals in, but we won't be sending on flow. So that's just an update, and I'll keep you informed by email as that develops. Hopefully, if not by tomorrow, I should hear something by midweek next week. Okay, under old business, item A is approval of the license agreement between Charter Township of Filer and the Lakeland Association Recreation Incorporated to construct the fire break. And reading over that agreement again, it's one that we were presented earlier, and I know Jim has been in discussions with Scott Mortel, and Scott and I had a brief discussion last week also, and I think the concerns are addressed there in terms of what happens if, how things are going to be handled. So I guess in my discussion with Jim, he felt that paragraph 7, that was a big hang up before on this. And Scott and I discussed the notion of going after a grant for repairs and what that involves, entails, and as long as I think both parties understand that, and of course there's the verbiage contained that if there's an obstacle there, then how it's going to be dealt with, and also the 30-day opt-out by either party. covers that, so. That's my input on it. I guess if you have questions, I would maybe recommend that address those to Jim, because he's probably more familiar with this. I mean, not probably, he's definitely more familiar with this than I am. So if you have any questions or concerns at this point, I guess let's bring those up before we entertain a motion. The only thing I didn't notice reading over this time, I hadn't caught before, there's, I think, just a typo there on paragraph 5, page 2. I think that's intended to be by contacting its president or his/her designated, just instead of his. So I don't want to give you,
Don't think that will be a problem.
Yeah, we anticipate that.
I have a question. Jim, are you in favor of this agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Okay, we have a motion by Cruz, support by Steggy to approve the agreement between Charter Township and Filer Lakeland Association to construct a fire break. Any further discussion, questions or concerns?
This was, we were working with Sarah Allman from the Michael Myers office. She is no longer with the company, so that got transferred over back to Richard Wilson, and I've been dealing with the last few days now. So he's probably the one that's going to have the information on that for the township's side of it. And also one of the other concerns that was there was how long is the grant money good for? It's good until December of this year. So once this gets approved, if we approve it tonight, the association approves it, then we will be pushing forward to get that grant money acquired and take care of this project.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. We have found out that the grant money is still available. And it's my recollection the paperwork for that's already been done. Everything, Ron, you did the majority of that
Paperwork been done, there's an updated, and they want a progress report as to where we are after tonight's meeting.
There's a couple of forms that they look through like that have to be done.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor then. Kathy, call the roll on that, please.
Steggy?
Yes.
Gutowski, yes. Ball? Absent. Walker?
Yes.
Brian Cruz? Kolineski?
Yes.
Dean Cruz?
Yes.
Okay. You're not going to be tomorrow or this week?
No, mine.
I'll get in and get that signed. I remember the cameras and yeah, okay, good. So we can take care of that in the morning.
I can notarize it tomorrow.
Okay. All right, item B is approval to dissolve the agreement with Stronach Township regarding the Stronach boat launch and withdraw monies from both the bank account attached to this account at Filer Credit Union. I did have some discussion with Phil Badabucker, the Stronach Township supervisor, and the information I got from Phil was that this was an agreement kind of between the two townships going back a lot of years. There was an interest in having a boat launch facility, and PCA donated the land, parcel land to Stronach Township for that purpose. Mark Merritt put a little bit of money into it to do some things to make it possible, but once that DNR boat launch was put in over there, this is pretty much obsolete now. It's completely overgrown, and I don't know that it's been used for anything in a lot of years. So it kind of made sense to, rather than have that account just sitting there. When I remember going and making a small deposit in it to keep it active, and when I don't remember, they sent a notification, and then I go do that. It just it made sense to dissolve resolve that, so.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Kachasik, support by Brian Cruz to dissolve the agreement with Stronach Township regarding the Stronach boat launch and to withdraw monies and close the bank account attached to this account, which is at Filer Credit Union. Any further discussion? Okay, Kathy, go ahead and call the roll.
Dean Cruz?
Yes.
Steggy?
Yes.
Brian Cruz?
Yes.
Kalinowski?
Yes.
Kirkowski, yes. Walker?
Yes. Okay, under new business, you have in your packet the bid from Swiderski Brothers Excavating regarding the work to secure the bank, where there's been a tremendous amount of erosion taking place back here behind the hall. And that was kind of an emergency situation, as you recall, because of the washout affecting the tracks, the railroad tracks, sand being washed over the tracks. So that we just need to take action to make that official. That was an emergency action, and you all verbally gave me permission to go ahead and have Swiderski Brothers do that. They did complete that just this afternoon. I don't know if you noticed when you came in, but it was completed. Pretty extensive job. I went and looked at it and felt really good about what they did, and I think it's going to take care of that issue very well. And then, of course, I don't know if I've reported to you before, but the well 3 being pumped off from time to time. And of course, the work we had done on that in 2015, which was quite extensive, that's where the problem really started. And Mike has Northern Pump and Well trying to get the fittings for us so that we can connect that pump-off pipe at the back of the well house into the pipe that goes into the ground that is actually an overflow pipe for the water tower that puts the water in the Manistee Lake, is so that we won't have to put it on the ground anymore, which would be a huge improvement. And I also spoke with Dan Neeson with the railroad company this afternoon. When I got back to town, I gave him a call to let him know that Paul was done and exactly what he had done. And he was very pleased with it. When I described what he had done, he was real happy, and also offered to have Paul go down and remove any of, they got the sand off the tracks. I walked the tracks here about 3 weeks ago or so, and there's 2 or 3 spots where they had piled up. And so I offered the township's behalf to have Paul remove that as well. And he was fine with things the way they were. He said they can take care of that. So he was just happy to have that done.
Make a motion on the official.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Brian Cruz, support by Dale Kalinowski to approve the bid from Swiderski Brothers Excavating for $11,230 for the work at the Township Hall to secure that washout area. Any other discussion? And I think all of you are familiar with what he actually did. Kathy, want to call the roll, please?
Kalinowski?
Yes.
Steggy?
Yes.
Brian Cruz? Walker?
Yes.
Dean Cruz?
Yes.
Kirkowski, yes.
Okay, we have on item C, approval of bid from Manistee Vinyl in the amount of $3,150 for replacement of 4. Pardon me?
You must be.
Oh, yeah, I missed B, I crossed it out, thinking it was crossed out here. Thank you. We're on item B, actually. Approval of bid from True Shine Cleaning and Preservation LLC for $660 to strip, refinish the rec hall floors, and also to do a deep cleaning of the kitchen area. And that bid actually includes 4 coats of wax on. The other bid we had was for putting down just 3 coats of wax. True Shine will put down 4 coats, plus they're going to be doing a deep cleaning, and their bid came in a little bit lower as well. The work was probably going to be done a little more in-depth by TrueShine, so that's the bid that we're looking at. And I would entertain a motion for approval of that.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second
Motion by Dale Kolonowski of support by Dean Cruz to approve the bid from TrueShine Cleaning and Preservation LLC in the amount of $660 to strip and refinish the rec hall floors, as well as do a deep cleaning of the kitchen area. Further discussion? The only thing I want to mention on that is something that I think we really need to look at, because we had those floors stripped and re-waxed, I want to say 3 years ago. And it wasn't very long before they were all marked up again. And that's due to those carts that the chairs are on, the tables are on, when those get wheeled out. And I've had some discussion with Bob Skier about that. I think either putting new racks in there or just removing the wheels off those old racks and replacing their small wheels, replacing with some much larger wheels that are going to support the weight a lot better, hopefully not mark up the floors like they are. So that's, once we get those floors done, I want to pursue, it's going to be minor, but have that done so that the floors will last a little bit longer.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. It's look fun.
Yeah. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item C is approval of the bid from Manistee Vinyl for $3,150 for replacement of 4 windows at the Township Fire Station.
Mine says 3,450.
Yours says $3,450? Oh, I'm sorry, you're looking at the actual bid. I've got,
That's 3,150.
The original quote, verbal quote he gave us was 150. After getting calculations and sent us the written quote.
yeah, good, I'm glad you caught that, Tom. Yeah, the actual written quote here is $3,450. So that should be corrected on our agenda. So it goes into the minutes. That's at $3,450 for replacement of the 4 windows. Okay.
Make a motion to accept that bid, 3,450.
And I'll second that motion. So we have a motion by Brian Cruz, support by Walker to approve the bid from Manistee Vinyl in the amount of $3,450 for replacement of 4 vinyl windows at the fire station. Any discussion?
We're getting pretty bad over there.
That's what I understand. And I don't know, Ron, did you have any discussion or Bob with Matt as to when he might be able to get at this guy? I know he's really busy.
He told us before winter.
Before winter.
So that's not very long, the way things are outside right now. He said he will get them done this fall, but he did not give us a date.
Bob and I have kind of taken over the staining and painting, staining of all the paneling and molding and everything at the house down there at 2111 because
Yesterday, Bob and I went and installed the fire extinguishers and the signs on the roof.
so, yeah, and I think, I don't know, it was you and Bob or who put the grab bars in the bathroom. I don't think it was.
The plumber did that.
Oh, Wilson did that, okay. But there's been little things like this that just we needed to get done, and it's been so hard to get Matt back in there that we've just been doing a few of those jobs ourselves. We've got all the doors that need to be stained as well. Yeah, it's just going to take time. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to approve that bid in the amount of $3,450 to replace those windows. Kathy, you want to call the roll on that, please?
Gutowski, yes. Dean Cruz?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Brian Cruz?
Yes.
Stady?
Yes.
Kolonowski?
Yes.
Okay, and then we have the furnace and air conditioning. No, I don't think it was too long after I got back from Cleveland and I came in and Tammy said, furnace is out. Or no, the air conditioning is up on that side. Fortunately, this one's still working. But at any rate, since Custom Sheet Metal put that in, she had contacted them, they came, looked at it, they submitted a bid. Kathy got some more bids that are in your packet, but unfortunately, most of those just came in today, so you haven't had a lot of time to look at them. And, you know, there's a couple of routes we could go on this, I guess. The only person I talked with in regards to those bids was Custom Sheet Metal, and they told me they're 4 to 6 weeks out right now before they can schedule anything to get in here. The furnace is good right now, but it was a lot older than I thought it was. I went down and I looked at the service records on it, and the first record of any service on it was in 2008. So I kind of thought, well, maybe that was only installed in 06 or 07. And when I talked to Custom Sheet Metal, I found out it was considerably older than that. I think it was 94. He said that was installed. Is that right, 94? And so, in light of that, he gave us a bid for not only replacing the air conditioning unit that's out for the offices on that side, but also to put a new furnace in, since potentially we can be looking at that down the road somewhere anyway. Certainly don't want to get into a situation where we have a furnace go out in the middle of winter and we can't get somebody to take care of it right away. So we had 3 more bids come in. As you can see, they're from Anderson Premier and Wilson. I guess we can take some time right now and review those bids and make a decision tonight. If you want more time to review those, if you feel you need more time and want to take the time to look over them and redo this, I'm hopefully anticipating the possibility of having to call a special meeting for our bond issuance with the sewer project soon. And we could kill both birds then, but it's up to you, whatever you would like to do as a board.
Wouldn't this be something that you would like to give to the building committee or review?
Well, they've reviewed the one proposal, I believe. Did the building grounds committee? I wasn't there.
No, we didn't see that.
You didn't see the bid from Custom Sheet Metal? Okay, so no, they haven't seen any bids. They won't be meeting again until
We could have a special
the
meeting.
25th. The 25th. So yeah, if you know, I don't want to wait until then for them to review it. Could call a special meeting of the Building and Grounds Committee to review these 4 bids and make a recommendation on that. And then we'd have to call a special meeting unless you're okay with waiting until October 1st or 2nd.
So I'm sure you looked at the 2 bids from Custom Sheet Metal because we have 2 furnaces and 2 air conditioning units. And their very first bid was only to replace one of those. And the other bids we have are replacing both of those, or all 4 of those units. So if you're looking at it, I'm going to make a decision.
Yeah, so you have 2 in your packet. What Kathy's talking about, the one, and I think that just came through today, the updated one. Okay, and it's written at the top, updated. So that includes 2. And yeah, I don't know. That's.
You got 2 here, they're done.
Yeah, that's just one bid. So Premier, when you look at those 2, they're the same.
Are these 2-stage furnaces or?
Well, the very top one for Custom Sheet Metal, if you look up, is not a 2-stage furnace, but if you look a little bit further down, if you can upgrade to a 2-stage 96% efficiency for that additional amount, additional $1,500. And then if you do, you know, there's additional costs on the second one from Custom Sheet Metal.
Yeah, the 9,800 there is for what's quoted above
But I
that,
do
which
have the
is
information
a
on
single
all of
stage.
these units if you want to
I think
take
the-
5 minutes and look at it.
I think these guys should look it over and make sure we're apples to apples.
It's
and
kind of
maybe
a
we
Yeah.
With 4 bids here, and
Well, and that was our concern too, was, this was such a rush, and make sure that we're comparing apples to apples on these bids. That's why we had custom resubmit, because I guess it was Anderson's bid that came in, and looking at that, it was for both of them.
So
So,
we called the customer
Yeah.
and had them redo it.
I think a motion that would go under recommendation
okay.
of building grounds committee.
Building grounds.
So you're making a motion for that?
I make a motion we go on the recommendation on the building and grounds committee. That they feel is the
Make sure that we're comparing.
best option.
The best option on the
And instead to call a special meeting to do it as soon as possible.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Brian Cruz, support by Koloneski, to table this and move it to the Building and Grounds Committee to review all 4 bids and then make a recommendation to the board.
And then we can before next meeting, do another call.
Yeah.
Because I think that's kind of a rush thing
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
weather getting the way it is.
Okay.
And we could check and see what the time is for each one of those to get that
Yeah,
project
yeah.
done too.
We'll-
Custom's ready for 4 to 6 weeks, you said.
Yeah, I don't know, we didn't ask that to the other.
Well, and we'll do that, so that when Building and Grounds is comparing this, they can take that into consideration too. I mean, if it's not too far out, if they're all reasonably in time, hopefully we're not going to need air in the offices a great deal anymore. There'll be a few days yet this month, I'm sure, but the main thing is that we get probably by October anyway,
And Ron, I
or
have,
mid-October.
Ron, I
Okay.
have information on all of those different
Okay.
furnaces, so I'll give that to you tonight.
Okay, and I'll get copies of it.
And Ron, do you wanna get in touch with Bob concerning this, or
I'll
we'll?
hold them tonight.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to send these quotes to the Building and Grounds Committee, and have them review them, and make a recommendation to the board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Yeah, I guess that's it. Public comment?
I'm going back to the sewer project.
Yes.
You said Brian needs a permit. What kind of permit are you talking about?
It's a permit from the DEQ, from the state. It's a required, it's called a 41 permit. It has to do with some state laws, whatnot. I can't explain it to you.
Okay, I just need
And
to,
unfortunately, our engineer's not here to explain that, but it's something that we had to apply for, which we did, I believe it was March 14th. DEQ got the permit in front of them. They have, I believe it's 150 days to review that, send back concerns that they have to the township. They took longer than they needed to get their concerns back to the township. Wade Trim then, our engineers, reviewed those concerns. They addressed all the questions that DEQ had of them and got them right back to them in a very timely manner. And then nothing happened until we got notification by email that we were going to have to apply for a 45-day extension to that permit, which we did back on August. I don't recall the exact date now, but it was a 45-day extension that we had to apply for. And so we did that, and I went to a meeting in Cadillac, I don't know, maybe about 2 weeks ago, roughly. 10 days ago, and met with DEQ's engineers, the city's engineers, one of Wade Trim's engineer, and myself, and Basically, there were a lot of concerns that DEQ had regarding some of the issues with the city. And those were based on information, charts and graphs that had been submitted again back a long time ago. And since that point in time, if you've been following the paper, the city's been doing a lot of videotaping of their infrastructure and looking at all their issues, combined overflow, the CSOs, and revised the information they sent to DEQ, and basically that's what the DEQ is responding to the information they had that was a little bit outdated. And when they saw the new information, a lot of their concerns were alleviated. There's still some conditions that the city has to meet that they already knew they had to and had plans to do that, but they didn't want to tear up the street, 12th Street, take care of some of those issues and redo the street, and then down the road, when we're ready to attach, have to tear it up again. So.
Okay, so this is called a 41 permit, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And I can get you more information on that if you would like. I've got a string of emails that references the state laws and so forth that comes from. If you'd like that information, I'd be happy to get it for you.
In the meantime, are you applying for any grants for this project?
Oh, we've already done that a long time ago.
Okay, have you gotten grants?
Yes.
For how much?
We've been awarded, well, first of all, we have the loan obligated for $3.83 million, and then we have a grant of $1.5 million,
Okay.
which, from everything I've been told, we may not need all of that, and so what we don't need then will be de-obligated.
Okay, these grants aren't going to go away at the time?
No, that was,
Okay.
those were the first two questions I asked. Was the loan, because the loan was supposed to be used by June of this year, and the grant I was concerned about too, and of course Brian Sousa is working closely with Rural Development, Blake Smith, the Rural Development engineer, and yeah, that's all. It's
So
all
that
still
grant is
good.
there to stay?
Yes.
There's no time limit on it?
Well, I don't know if there's a time limit. There was on the loan, like I say, June of this year, but they've extended that.
At the same interest rate?
Yeah, everything's the same, yeah.
So,
And the other-
in other words, you don't have to begin this project until probably maybe spring?
Well, hopefully, we're going to start the construction of the sewer main this fall yet. But we won't, probably will not get to the laterals, the construction of the laterals until spring.
Okay, so now, the question I have is these REUs that are attached to the property that you own, this is not going to come up until this project is totally finished, correct?
Right, right. We need the
So that
assessment.
might not be till next summer.
No, it's not.
The REUs are going to be assessed in December.
Oh, yeah, that's right. December of this year for the new tax year, yeah.
Okay, but if the project's not finished by then, you can't apply the REUs.
I don't know. Well, that's a question, I guess, for legal to answer.
Because this is really, I mean, we're attaching this to all these people, the owners of the property, and it's really a hardship for people to do these REUs, you know, so, I was just wondering if you have to wait till the whole project is finished, and then, you know, because apparently it won't be finished until spring.
Right. I
So
don't
you can't apply
anticipate
it
it will.
until it's totally ready to,
Let me, can I get back to you with that question?
yeah, please.
Okay. Oh, and the other thing that obviously was of concern too was our 60-day contract with Elmer's. Yeah, they were happy to see it moved out because they initially, when they contacted Wade Trim, they wanted to bid it October or in the fall for next spring. And at that point in time, we anticipated getting started, and so we said, no, you've got to bid it now for construction beginning in August. And so they were good with it being moved out, and I know Brian had already talked to them then about getting a new contract get it in writing from them that,
So what I'm asking is, does the project have to be totally finished?
Right.
With accessibility before you can turn
before
RVs
you're
on the
assessed,
property?
right, yeah.
Does it have to be?
That's, I will get an answer for you.
Because I know it isn't, doesn't look like it's going to get finished until spring totally. To
No,
be access,
you're correct.
accessibility, okay. So you can't put the RVs on the property until,
I will
yeah, you'd have to.
confer with legal on that.
There'd be no way to put it on in the middle of a tax.
Yeah, that's
Thing anyway.
right,
It
yeah.
was done in the
And you
spring.
can't pay this unless it's finished.
The summer taxes don't come out until what? July?
They're doing
July 1, so if it's done in March,
in September, yeah.
how are you gonna get that money for
Well, that's,
April, May, June? You know, they already had a tax somewhere.
Well, that's the problem, you're not gonna have it finished, I mean, you can't put RVs on property if there's no accessibility isn't there.
and what Brian is saying, if it doesn't go on the tax roll until 2018, then it's going to be operational.
Free.
There isn't going to be any assessment for several months, while it's in use. So again, I will get with our legal counsel on that and get back to you.
Yeah, because you can't put the RVs to a vendor tax if it's not fully complete. You know, so you have to wait.
I will get back to you.
Yeah, do that.
Okay?
Sorry about that, I just need to know, thank you.
Yep. Any other public comment? Anyone? Okay. Anything else come before the board tonight, Brian? Do you have anything else? Tom? Kathy? Dale? Well, Dean?
We had a problem about a trailer and stuff. I already reported it in. It stinks. We got complaints.
Okay.
So I already went to Penn and got this one.
Okay. You talked to Larry at all?
Huh?
Talked to Larry too?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, the only thing I have, a couple of things. Just note that there's a meeting on September 13th from 2 to 4 at the Sheriff's Office regarding FEMA, and I do plan to attend that. And then the second item I've got is that all municipalities are going to be required, if they have X number of water customers, to have an asset management plan in place for 2018. This is the new requirement by DEQ. Sure, it's coming from all the issues they had in Flint. And as you recall, about a year and a half ago, we met with Mike Ingalls here, Michigan Rural Water Association, and worked on that very thing. But we're going to meet again. I've already talked to Dean. He served on the committee before. What did I tell you? October 13th at 10 o'clock here at the hall. We'll be meeting with Mike to update our asset management plan and do whatever tweaking we need to do on that. Scott Conradson has already contacted me about that. In fact, when I was in Cleveland, I got a call from him and about that very thing, so we talked about that. And, I would like to ask you to sit in on that, Kathy. Shirley did before as clerk, but I'd like you to sit in on that. And we'll probably have Tammy, our billing person, sit in on that. And of course, Mike Pepper will sit in on that. So if anyone else would like to sit in, as long as we don't have a quorum, I would open that to anyone. But I'll certainly keep you informed of where we're going with that. And that's all I have for tonight. So with that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Motion by Guzowski, supported by Brian Cruz to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?